Hi everyone, it's Kristie here with another video for Two Scrapbook Friends. And if you haven't guessed already, today we're going to be focused on Nuvo Drops. I'm going to take you through how I organize and swatch out my Nuvo Drops and some quick tips for how to use them, because I know sometimes if you're just getting started with them, or if you have some that you haven't used in a while, it can be a little bit frustrating to use your drops. So the first thing I'm going to take you through is my swatch. So I really love to swatch my materials that I use in my craft room. I think it's a really great way to be able to see, what goes with what. It's a great way to practice using your materials. If you're doing your Nuvo Drop swatches for this many Nuvo Drops, you're going to get a little better at it as you go. And that would be the same thing for ink blending swatches or even stamping swatches. So I've got a couple of ideas for other videos for swatches that I use in my craft room, and it is one of the tools that I use really quite often. I learned from Kathy Zilski the power of using swatches, and I've been doing this for a few years and I really find it helpful. So I'll take you through the process of how I make my swatches, and then we're going to make a couple of these Nuvo ones because I want you to be able to see making them in action. So let's go through some of the particulars of the swatch ring itself. So this is just a ring. I think I got a pack of 10 of them from Staples. Really a great tool to have within your craft room and your house. Then I cut out several tags. I used the Neenah Solar White Classic Crest 110-pound paper for this. Now, normally I'm not necessarily putting my Nuvo Drops always on the 110-pound Neenah paper, but because this is a tool that I use often, I didn't want it to break down easily. So I find the 110-pound paper holds up really well, and that's what I chose to make my swatches in. But you can choose to make them in whatever paper you use most often. That's generally the best way to create your swatches, is use the mediums that you use most often. That way you know what results you are going to get. So then I use a tag die. Any tag die will work. I have had this set in my collection for a number of years. I don't know. I don't even know where it came from. But there are a few great nested sets available right now through Two Scrapbook Friends. I think there's one from Tailored Expressions. Tim Holtz has one. So use the tag die that works for you in your workflow, and use the size that works for you. I liked this size. So this tag is 2 inches wide and just over 3.5 inches tall. So I find this is a good size. It's easy to hang on to. I'm not stuck like having to, move the tags all the way out of the way to see what the color looks like or what the color is. So I find that's a really quick and easy way to check that out, and I really like that size for that reason. So that's what works for me. So again, the tag die that I have, and I think most of them do, punch the hole in the top and it fits that ring perfectly. If the tag set that you have doesn't punch the size of hole that you need, you could just take a classic hole punch. I think the one that I have is still the one I had from the paper route that I had when I was 9. So it's been around for a long time, but you could very easily just use a regular hole punch or any type of hole punching tool that you have. Okay, so that's the tag piece. Carolyn, a while ago, got me hooked on these pens. So I think most of us that enjoy paper crafting have an affinity towards great pens, and this Sharpie Click pen is fantastic. I always keep a couple on hand. I use them for everything. They're great. They don't, get globbed up when you're using them. It's a really nice click. Great pen. So I'm just going to show you. We're gonna walk through the swatch for this Nuvo Drop. This one is called White Blizzard. So these pens just glide right over your paper. So we've got White Blizzard that we're going to do today. We're going to do the swatch for Limoncello. And I chose a few different Nuvo Drops to demonstrate to you because there are a few different kinds. We've got Ebony Black. of drops, and they all have different properties. So I wanted you to be able to see what that looks like. And the last one I'm going to show you today is Love Potion. Okay, so let's take a look at the drops themselves. So there, as I mentioned, there are different types of drops. So you can see here we have glitter drops, which have glitter in them. So you're going to get some glitter effects on your project. We have jewel drops. Now, jewel drops are really interesting. They are translucent. So you're going to see when we use this limoncello one that you can see through it. So that creates some interesting effects. Then we have the crystal drops, which are opaque, so you won't be able to see through those on your project. And then there are dream drops, and these add a bit of an iridescent effect to your project. There are others. These are the ones that I have in my collection. I believe there are stone drops, and there might even be a few others that that I haven't got my hands on yet. But these are the ones that that I find are really great. Most of the ones in my collection are the crystal drops. I find those are the ones that I reach for the most. But of course, use whatever ones work for you and whatever works in the projects that you like to do. So you can see across the top of the bottles, I like to put a little drop of the Nuvo drop itself on the top of my bottles so that I can see really easily. I'll just pull out a couple more to show you what the color looks like, because I want to be able to see what it looks like in real life and what it's going to look like on my project, or hold a piece of paper up to it to see if I'm getting a good match. And I might not be able to tell that just by looking at the bottle. So I find having that little dot of the little Nuvo drop at the top is really helpful for me to be able to see what that looks like and how things are going to look in my project. Okay, so let's get back to swatching here. So when I am working with the Nuvo drops, I like to have a Post-it note or a piece of scrap paper, whatever you've got handy, just on hand, because you want to give the Nuvo drops a really good shake before you use them. I'm going to take the top off here. And again, this is White Blizzard and this is a glitter drop. So we're going to expect to see some glitter in these drops. So with that shake, I can see that my test drop looks pretty good there. So I am going to just move the Post-it note a little bit out of the way, and we're going to get started with our swatching. So for the swatching, I like to do a big drop, a medium-sized drop, and a small drop. You can do whatever works for you. I find I just wanted to go back and get that one a little bit more round. So you can see if you don't like it right at the start, you can go back and add a little bit more. The key is making sure you've got the right consistency. So those test drops and the test paper becomes really helpful. I really encourage you to make sure that you're doing that test, because sometimes if you haven't used your Nuvo in a while, you'll get air pockets and you'll go to put it on your almost finished card, because it's, you know, these embellishments are the last thing you do, and you go to push and you get an air pocket and it sprays a little like things on your paper where you didn't want them. And you know, we've all been there, and it's never fun. So make sure you give it a good shake and use your test paper. That's a really great way to minimize the risk of using the Nuvo drops. So I'm going to show you one thing that I really use probably almost every time I work with Nuvo drops. So you can see that these drops are very dimensional. And if that's your thing, totally cool. You can leave them like that. I prefer them to be a little less dimensional. So I want them to be a little more flat because most often I'm making cards and I want them to go through the mail easily, and I don't want them to get squished. So, and even if I'm using them in my scrapbooking, I generally don't want to add a ton of bulk to my page. So again, do whatever works for you, but here's a great trick to reduce reduce the amount of dimension on your Nuvo Drops. If you just hold your paper, and this works with any size of paper that you're using, and you're just gonna flick with your finger on the back of the paper. And you can see, so we got a little bit of a globbiness there with the first one, but you know, that's okay. I can redo that after, or you know what, this is just a swatch. It doesn't really matter. But you can see that these two really spread out nicely, and they have the look of just enamel dots. So again, this is a good lesson to show you actually, because the more Nuvo you use and the less it has already set on your paper, the more it's going to spread. So I probably could have left that a little, like a few seconds longer before I flicked the back of it, but it just gives you an example of what to expect when you see some of the, when you try to do the flicking piece. But these two look really great. So let's set this off to the side, and I'm going to put this off camera because I don't want to be, my fingers are going to get right in there if I don't move that around. So let's go on to the next one. I'm going to show you the swatch for Limoncello. So again, this is the Jewel Drop. So this is translucent. So we're going to give this a shake. And when we put this down on the paper, we expect to be able to see a little bit through it. So I'm just going to do my quick test here. And it looks like we've got a decent consistency here. So let's go with a bigger Nuvo, a medium one, and small. So you can see that looks quite thick right now, just like the White Blizzard did. And in order to give these a little bit of time to set up, I'm going to move on and do the swatch from Ebony Black, and we'll come back and do some flicking and tapping on the back of that just to reduce the dimension a little bit, just as we did on the other ones. So I'm just testing it now. So here, did you see? I'm not sure if you could see that. So I just tested out the Ebony Black, and the first thing was this little almost splatter of the Nuvo. So that's what you don't want on your project. So that's why having this test piece is really helpful, because you want to be able to avoid having those splatters on your projects. So let's get in here with the Ebony Black. We're going to do a larger one, medium, and small. And those look pretty good. We'll reduce that dimension in a moment. And lastly, oh, sorry. So the Ebony Black was the crystal drops again. So those are the opaque ones. So just so you can just keep track of the differences here. And lastly, the last type that I have in my collection are the Dream Drops. So this is Love Potion. And these are pretty neat. They add a little bit of iridescent look to your project. I just have two of these. I have the Love Potion, which is this one, and Cloud 9, which is a white with iridescent properties. So you can see they all add a little bit something different to what you're working on. Okay, so I'm just going to get this piece of scrap paper out of the way so that I don't stick my hands in it. And we're going to get back to reducing the dimension on some of these. So again, this is the Limoncello. I'm just going to flick the back. And you can see that that dimension has now reduced, and these look great. So I'm going to set that off to the side again so that I don't ruin it. Then let's move on to the Ebony Black. Give that a couple flicks. And that looks pretty good. There's a little bit of sliding on that first one, but again, that's okay. The more Nuvo you use, the more it's going to spread. So, you know, quite often I'm not making these bigger dots on my projects, so I'm not too worried about that. And again, this is just the swatches. I'm doing this so that I can see what they look like for when I go to use them. And lastly, we have the Love Potion and that looks great. So you can see just those couple flicks really take down the dimension, and I really love that. It's a great trick. I learned it on a video a few years ago, and it really works every time. So again, what's key though is you let your project set up a little bit. Let your Nuvo set up a little bit on your project before you begin flicking. Otherwise, you'll get a little more movement. And again, we saw that with the white blizzard. So I wanted to take you through a couple of Nuvo drops that I really think are great to have in your collection because there are a lot of variety of them. And, you know, sometimes when we see that many options, it's overwhelming and we're not quite sure what to get. So I find there are a few that I reach for often. So Simply White. This is, you know, classic, just white Nuvo drops. These are the crystal ones, so they are opaque. You cannot see through them. They add great additions and embellishments to your projects. They can also work as snow. I kind of alternate sometimes between the Simply White and the White Blizzard for snow, so that's a good option. Then there is Gray Mist. Gray Mist is one of the jewel drops, so it is translucent, and it's really cool for some subtle effects. So this is a really great all-purpose one as well. Then there are several different types of reds. I have a few in my collection. There are a couple that I reach for often when I'm working on holiday projects. So Red Berry and Ruby Slippers, those are two of my go-tos. I really like both of them. One of the great things is when you're looking through collection packs, or you're looking through, you know, scrapbook paper that you have, or, you know, 6x6 paper pads, have your swatch ring handy, because I'm just going to grab actually a 6x6 paper pad so we can take a look at this. So this 6x6 paper pad is from Photoplay. So right away I can see that my Dandelion Yellow is going to go great with this collection pack. And if I flip through a couple more options here, I can see that Apple Green will go well with some of these papers. Let's see, Sunlit Meadow even maybe for to add some glitter. So there's lots of great ways. I really find you can use your swatch ring. It's a great tool to be able to have handy in your craft room. Woodland Green is one that I also use quite often in holiday cards. There's just so many great uses for these, and I really like to use them on my cards. I think it's a fun way to be able to add some dimension, but not too much dimension. And I really find that it's they're fun to work with. You know, sometimes they can be a little tricky, you know, if you haven't used them in a while, as we talked about before, but they are really a great tool in your craft room, and a great way to add a lot of different color and pops of color and little pieces of dimension to your projects. So I hope you found this helpful in taking a look at how to use Nuvo drops. Don't be afraid to try things out. And if you make your own swatch ring, I would love to hear your comments about it and how you use it within the craft room. So thanks so much for joining me. I hope this gave you some ideas of how to use your Nuvo drops and how to organize them within your space. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, and if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and we will see you next time.